Matthew, the gospel according to Matthew chapter 17, the gospel according to Matthew chapter 17 is where we'd like to call your attention to on today. And we believe there is much space for preaching to be found in the gospel according to Matthew chapter 17. It's a familiar passage of scripture. And as I oftentimes say, whenever a preacher is going to preach from a familiar text, the challenge for them is to endeavor to unpack it in an unfamiliar way. And so this is our task, the gospel according to Matthew chapter 17, and we shall begin reading at verse 24. And I'll read verses 24 through 27 in your hearing. And it reads, "And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter," I'm a little muffled, "and said, Doeth not your master pay tribute?" In other words, those who were assigned to collect the temple taxes came to Peter's house. And not only did they require tax money of Peter, they had another question. And it seems like they're trying to ensnare Peter now, because they're trying to bring a railing accusation against Jesus to mar his character as who he says he is. And so they say, now, I know we're going to get your money, but the question is, does your master pay his bills? And so Peter immediately answered, yes. In other words, you don't know who you're talking about. This man here's the Son of God. Of course he pays his bills. And when he was coming to the house, Jesus prevented him. In other words, Peter now leaves the men at the door, turns around, heads in the direction of Jesus, Anthony. But before he could get there, Jesus already knows through his omniscience what he's coming for. And so he stops him and said, "What the world wrong with you? What are you thinking about, Simon?" Notice he doesn't even call him Peter. He calls him by his earthly name now. He says, "Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers?" Now, this poetic language can be confusing, Keisha, if you don't understand what he's saying, because what he's trying now to bring home as a point to Peter is that kings, Elder Johnson, whenever they tax the people, they don't tax the people in their own house, because their children are considered to be royalty just like them. They tax the common people or the subjects of the kingdom. And so what he's saying to Peter is, you must not know about me. I'm the king's son. I don't have to pay taxes. Do you even understand who you're talking to, Peter? But here is what Peter says. Peter says, of strangers. In other words, Peter said, I know the answer. So the question now is, if you know the answer, why are you asking me? I see something here, because Jesus says to him, then the children are free. He says, notwithstanding, lest we should offend them. In other words, unless they just think I don't want to pay my bills. This is what I need you to do. Go to the sea, cast and hook, take up the fish that first cometh up. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. Now, I know you thought he was speaking Ebonics, a piece of money. But the reality is the taxation of every male Jew over 20 years old was half a shekel. And so for him to pay both taxes for he and Peter, it was a whole drachal, which meant it was not a half, it was a whole, so it was one coin. So that's why he said, go find the piece of money. And he said, take it and give unto them for me and thee. See, the 26th verse is where I had a problem, because Peter says of strangers, which means he knows the correct answer. Jesus then says to him, then the children are free, which he could have at that point ended the conversation, Holmes, and said, well, I don't owe anybody anything. It's over. But he says, go to the sea and get a piece of money. Because what Jesus sees here now is, although Peter knows his answer, Peter still has his own problems. Because although you don't owe nothing, Jesus, I still owe something. Which means, although I know the answer, I still got some problems. And for a little while, I want to talk from this thought. I've got problems like Peter. Look at your neighbor, say, neighbor, I've got problems like Peter. You acting like you don't want to be real. Find one more person and say, I think I talk to you because look like you got problems too. Tell them, say, I've got problems like Peter. Father, help me preach this under your power. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Be seated in the presence of God. I've got problems like Peter. It was Anthony DeMello who said, and I quote, problems only exist in the human mind. What Anthony DeMello now intimates to you and I is that all problems are uniquely based upon the subjective perception of humanity. Which further brings the clarity to the fact that the more we seem to meditate on our problems, the more magnified our problems seem to become. Which further then suggests to you and I that what I allow to invade my mind will eventually incarcerate my movements. May I submit then for your cognitive consideration that your body can never take you anywhere physically that your mind has not already journeyed to mentally. And furthermore, when it comes to problems, this simple suggestion about humanity likewise speaks to the sequestration of divinity, which simply says now that God does not see things the way we see things. It also means that what man views as a problem, God sees as potential. Because sometimes we see it as an obstacle in our way, but God sees it as an opportunity to prove that his ways are not the ways of man and his thoughts are not the thoughts of man. So what we see as a problem, God sees as a possibility. This didactic detail about divinity may seem to be simply philosophical, but in reality, it's very theological, because the reasoning behind the revelation is what causes you to understand that God can't see a problem, he can only see a potential. What God sees as potential and possibility is found in the fact that God is what we have to recognize as preeminent. Somebody say God is preeminent. When we talk about the preeminence of God, we're saying God is more important than anybody. God has more knowledge than everybody, and God's skill set supersedes everyone's skill set, which means God's at the front, you're at the back. God's at the top, you're at the bottom. God is big, you're small. God has ability, you have inability. God is preeminent. It was Isaiah that said in 55:8-9, for my thoughts are not your thoughts and my ways are not your ways. He goes on to say, for as the heavens is higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. Now, when you deal with the ways of God, it comes from a Hebrew word, direct, and direct now denotes that God has the ability to do things and walk down certain paths and create certain opportunities and make ways that man does not have the ability to be able to do and to make. So that's what makes God preeminent over all situations and over all predicaments and even over all people. Somebody shout, God is preeminent. you have to understand it's the preeminence of God that says there's no problem big enough or bad enough or burdensome enough to bother God. Whenever you look at a problem, you see it as something that's insurmountable. When God looks at a problem, he sees it as something that's too small for him to worry about and too minute for him to be bothered about, because God has this ability to not only overcome problems, but sometimes he even creates a problem just to overcome the problem, to prove to us that he was preeminent over the problem before the problem became a problem. It's this preeminence of God that makes me fall in love with him. But not only do we find the reasoning behind this revelation in the preeminence of God, but also in the power of God. It was Paul that told the church at Ephesus in Ephesians 3:20, now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all we can ask or think, according to the power that works within us. Aren't you glad that God is not a stingy God? Because the reality is he is omnipotent, which means he's all power. He does not have power. He is power. He does not connect to the power source. He is the power source. Anytime power is to be given and to be distributed, it has to come from him. So God could be stingy and say, I am power all by myself. But aren't you glad that the same power that is God is the same power that works through God? It's the power that works for us and works inside of us. It's the same power that God puts upon us. Now unto him that is able, which means he has this ability now to share his power, because he wants you and I to be powerful and to do powerful stuff. It is this particular power now that God sometimes uses to put what I call the do on us. Somebody shout the do. Because notice the text says he's able to do exceedingly abundantly above all you ask or think, according to the power that works inside of us. So the do that he puts up on you is the do that he wants to work through you in order for you to get stuff done that you couldn't get done except he put the do on you. Why don't you text your neighbor and tell him, the only reason I do what I do is because the do that's on me. The only reason I can work like I work is because what's working on the inside. The only reason I'm able to move like I move is because of what's moving through me. Somebody shout, I've got the do on me. It's that do that gives me preferential treatment. It's that do that puts me at the front of the line when I'm supposed to be at the back of the line. It's that do that causes me to find the solution in the midst of the problem. It's the do of God on my life that separates me from everybody else. And the pattern I found in my own life is I was never able to do anything I was supposed to do until after I had already done it. Because every time I tried to do it, I tried to do it without the do. I tried to do it from my own power. But when I rested in the do of God, I realized after it was already done, I could do it the whole time, because it was not me doing it. It was the do working through me. Not somebody and say, you got to do on you, you've got to do in you, and you've got to do working through you. Sometimes what God requires is that we show our faith before he shows our faithfulness. And sometimes we come to the place where we're ignorant to the do that's on our life. And many times, Benny, we let the devil trick us into believing that we cannot do a certain thing. But I told you, some things you cannot do until it's already done. And I got Bible to prove it. When 10 lepers walked up to Jesus and said, Master, Son of David, have mercy on us, he did not touch them. He said, walk that way and show yourself to the priest. I got Bible to prove it. When Naaman had leprosy, he told Elisha, lay hands on me and heal me. Elisha said, go dip in the Jordan 7 times, which means sometimes God won't touch you, sometimes he won't talk to you, sometimes he tells you to go, and some things that don't happen right now will happen on the way. And many times you got to start moving before the do starts doing everything it's supposed to do. Nudge your neighbor, said, in this season you got to get up and go back to school. You got to get up and go start the business. You got to get up and walk out in your ministry. You got to get up and expand your horizon, and you've got to do some things that you would not normally do, because until you do what you're supposed to do, the do will not work through you. Somebody shout, I got the do on me. Here it is, here it is. It is this God, Jerry, that we serve that's not only preeminent and has power, but this same God that we serve, here is what I love. He has a plan. Somebody shout, he's got a plan for my life. In Jeremiah 29:11, he said, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, said the Lord, thoughts of peace and not evil, to bring you into an expected end, which means I've already written your story. God, help me here. Oh, God, I don't care how bad the story looks right now. Somebody shout, my story's already been written. I'm in intermission right now. That's the only reason things are stopping. That's the only reason things are not coming together. I'm in intermission, but the story has already been written. And I don't care how rough and rocky the introduction is. I don't care how crazy the plot is. I already know what the conclusion is. He has given me an expected end. Somebody shout, I won't die like this. Somebody shout, it will not end like this. Somebody shout, this is not it for me. God's got an expected end. My story is not over. Oh God, you ought to go to Facebook and hit somebody up and tell them the thing the devil meant to be my tomb is the thing the Lord's going to use to be my womb. The thing that you use to bury me is what God's going to use to birth me. I'm coming out, and I'm coming out better than I was before I went in. Here it is. Y'all sit down, you're going to make me nervous. God told me to tell you this. He said, if a problem was acknowledged by divinity, it would abort the plan for humanity, which means this. If God looked at your problems and got frustrated, Frazier, it would mean he would have to scrap everything he's planned for your life. But something that is difficult for us to deal with that causes us worry and trouble is something that causes God delight and causes God pleasure, which means every time you look at your problem, Pastor J, and you become frustrated and you become fearful, God on the other hand becomes cheerful, because God understands here comes an opportunity for me to show myself mightily in your situation. Somebody shout, God's like Radio Shack. You've got problems, he's got answers. Somebody shout, yes Lord. Watch this. Watch this. Here it is. Here it is. God told me to tell you this. He said the subjective nature of a problem is what unites us and separates us simultaneously. Please don't miss this. Please don't miss this. Because what I go through on today may uniquely differ from what you're going through on today. But it may be the very thing that you go through on tomorrow, which means it separates us and it divides us. My problem ain't your problem today, but my problem may be your problem tomorrow. Okay, you didn't get it. Let me flash my light like Men in Black and take that back. See if you get this one. Today's empathy may be the embryonic stage of tomorrow's sympathy, which means what you are compassionate about today, you may be crying about tomorrow. Somebody shout, my problem may not be your problem today, but you better watch how you handle me in my problem today, because it may be your problem tomorrow. Somebody shout, your compassion today may determine your crying on tomorrow. That's why Paul said, if you see a brother overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Somebody shout, I may not go through it today, but it may be that tomorrow. Your participation in another man's problems is practice for your own problem. That's why you got to watch how you handle me, because you never know what's getting ready to come in your life. You got to be careful when you decide to come to my house, because you don't understand what's getting ready to come to your house. That's why you've got to critically decide and carefully choose who you're going to allow to be in your space. Touch somebody and tell them, in this season, everybody can't be in my space. But Kenny, here's what God told me to tell you. He said, everyone who's walking behind you isn't necessarily walking with you. Watch this, watch this, watch this. God told me this. He says, you got to do, D'Anthony, come down here. Kenny, come down here real quick. He said, you got to do what I call the stop test. I want you to get behind him and just start walking. Just start walking, start walking. Now stop real quick. See, the problem is Kenny was walking behind you, but he wasn't walking with you. Now get real close to him this time, Kenny. Get right there. Get up on him. You're almost, no. Get behind him, get behind him, get behind him. Like you're almost going to touch him. D'Anthony, start walking, but you got to stay with him. You got to stay with him, stay with him. Now stop real quick, D'Anthony. See, what he ought to do now is touch you when you stop. So he's still walking behind you. Kenny, get close to him, get close to him. Now walk, D, walk. Stop real quick. See, he touched you then. See, sometimes God said, you got to stop and do the stop test. And if the person don't touch you, it means they ain't walking with you. They're just walking behind you. Look at somebody and say, I need somebody who can touch me in this. Okay, please don't miss this. God told me to tell you, he said, in this season, you are no longer required to keep walking with folk you can't feel. You have been lying to yourself long enough, acting like they're with you when you know they're just behind you. But God said, in this season, I'm giving you the permission to clean your phone out. I'm giving you the permission to small or to squeeze or to shorten your circle and make sure it only includes people you can feel. Please don't miss this. God said in this season, you got to get used to the concept of running for God, but walking with other men. Okay, I seem contradictory now because I told you, you got to get rid of some folks. See, everybody you can't get rid of. Some folk you're going to need in this season. And so God said, you got to get used to running for God, but walking with other men, which means in this season, I got to surround myself with people who already look like what I want to look like. And I got to surround myself with people who are already doing what I'm trying to do. In other words, in this season, somebody shout, in this season, you are either my coach or my star player. Tell them, say, you can no longer ride in my car. You can no longer eat my food. You can no longer come to my house and play for the other team. You got to make sure you're on my team and that you're trying to help me win in this season. And so God told me this. He said, anything in your life that does not create or contribute to your life and your life solutions will eventually become your life's problems. And sometimes the problems that we have are not problems we're supposed to have. The problems we have come from the people who are in our lives, creating the problems that we have in our lives. When was the last time you did the problem check and you did the same thing Abraham did when he took Lot, when he was not supposed to take Lot and had to separate himself from Lot in order to get confusion out of his life? Sometimes you've got to check your surroundings and see, are these problems self-inflicted? Have I brought this on myself because of who I've allowed to come in my space who's not supposed to be there? God told me to tell you this. He said problems are generally opportunities disguised as opposition designed for your development. Please don't miss this. Sometimes opportunity comes, but it looks like a problem. But what you don't understand is God allowed the problem to come because the problem was disguised, but it was opportunity the entire time. And sometimes you got to go through the rough patches and you've got to go through the rough places, and God's got to bring you through opposition in order to get you to the other side of opportunity. And God told me to tell you, any problem that's too big for you to handle is just the right size for you to hand over, which means sometimes he puts too big stuff in your life, Calhoun. Sometimes he puts oversized opposition in your life just to show you it's actually overt opportunity. He's simply trying to set you up so he can step in and pull you out of what you got yourself in. Lest I hold you long in this textual tapestry of truth, we find the rambunctious and sometimes resistant and easily rattled disciple by the name of Peter, who understands this better than most. He finds himself with the problem that he does not have the power or the prowess or the prosperity to solve. Here he comes now, because this looks like a job for Jesus. But before we get to Jesus, may I remind you that the text is so soaked in simplicity, washed in wisdom, and cleansed with correction, ironed with instructions, and hung up through hope until it forces me to pull off the past and put on the present. That's $25 worth of words with a 25-cent meaning, which says, when I look at the text, my problems turn into answers. Because I see something in Peter's life, because in the 17th chapter of the Gospel according to Matthew, it's been called the most interesting, instructive, and incredible chapters throughout the entire New Testament. Let me walk the dog for a few seconds. It is in the 17th chapter where we find the disciples on the Mount of Transfiguration. It's in the same 17th chapter where they come down to the mountain and they heal a lunatic boy, and Jesus casts the devil out and tells them, this kind goeth not but by fasting and prayer. It is in the same 17th chapter where Jesus turns to them and tells him the Son of Man are going to be betrayed by men. He's going to die. 3 days later, he's going to get up. But then it progressively moves now to Peter's house, because Josephus says that Peter's house is in Capernaum, and Capernaum was Jesus' basis for ministry, which meant he set his camp up at Peter's house. They have been in revival. They've been doing ministry. They've been to the mountain, came to the valley. He has an exegesis concerning eschatology, but now he talks to them about something that they don't really understand, that he is not like man, but he's really a king. But he looks at this situation and shows us that Peter had a right to have a problem, but then uses Peter's problem to help us with our problems, to prove to us that no matter how big our problems are, his promises always supersedes our problems, which means his promises becomes our answers. Theologians look at this particular text and they have three views when they discuss it in theological circles. They say the first view is he was trying to show the importance of being subject to the higher power. Romans 13:1 said, let every soul be subject unto the higher power. They said that's why he paid the money, because he had to be subject to the higher power. The second view is he tried to show the strength of his power, because in Matthew 28:18 he said, all power is given unto me in both heaven and in earth. But it's the third view that becomes the sureness of God's providence now, because they say God was simply trying to prove that he is Jehovah Jireh, that regardless of what your problem is, he has the power and the ability to provide for whatever your problem is. Please afford me the homiletic latitude to pull out my exegetical rifle and chase a rabbit in the text, because the text now gives us clarity concerning Jesus' providence and how he's simply trying to solve the problem of Peter. And then simultaneously he speaks to you and I and shows us that whatever problem we have, he can solve it just like he did for Peter. You do know who Peter is, right? It is Peter's name in the Greek, which means rock. Peter's name is Petros. It comes from Petra. Petra means big rock, which means Jesus. But Petros means a little rock, which means Peter. He's the second disciple. He's the fisherman that quit. He's the one that denied Jesus. He's the cusser. He's the one that cut off another man's ear. But now he's Peter who has a problem. Anybody just like Peter? You've got problems and you did not know exactly what to do with the problems, and the problem would not go away. You prayed and the problem was still there. You shouted and the problem was still there. You danced and the problem was still there. You gave offering and the problem was still there. If you can identify with what I just said, you've got problems just like Peter. Somebody shout, I've got problems like Peter. Well, the good news is, since you got a problem just like Peter, it means your name can figuratively become Peter temporarily. Nudge your neighbor, say, my name is Peter. You have no idea what you just said, because Peter in the Greek means rock. It means he's strong. I told you last time it was no accident that God called Peter a rock, because a rock is the only thing that can be scourged on the outside but not damaged on the inside. It is a rock that can only be formed through three particular categories. You have what is called a metamorphic rock. You have what is called a sedimentary rock and an igneous rock. A metamorphic rock is formed when something explodes like a volcano. A sedimentary rock is formed when something through the storms and the elements take place to cause debris to be carried from one place to the next. And then the igneous rock is only formed when things crystallize around it that has been formed through other situations that have taken place through inclement weather and through volcanic situations, and come together and make the igneous rock. All I'm trying to tell you is your name is Peter, because you got like you are because you had to go through some fiery situations. You got like you are because you had to weather some storms. And you got like you are because some things blew you from one place to the next. And you became the man you are and the woman that you are because people literally threw you away and tried to damage you on the outside, but you still made to hold it together on the inside. Somebody shout, I'm a rock. That's all I'm trying to tell you. You're just like Peter. You are a rock, but that's not the only thing that makes you like Peter. That's not the only thing that gives you a commonality of purpose with Peter. Here is the real reason the text points out your name is Peter, because just like Peter, you don't have sufficient means for your problem. It is Peter in the text now who has no idea what he's going to do. I'm preaching to Peters. You left your house and you got an eviction notice waiting on you tomorrow. I'm preaching to Peters because you left work and you know you were late that last time and he wrote you up and you've been praying all weekend long you don't get fired. You just like Peter. You've been hiding your car at your mama's house, at your partner's house, because when it comes to your house, they're going to take it back to their house. You just like Peter. You understand you barely got enough food to eat. You've been making wish sandwiches. You've been taking 2 pieces of light bread, put them together and wish you had something to go in between. You just like Peter. You don't have what you need, but you got a God who can supply what you need. And so since you are like Peter, we got to learn how to do what Peter did, because the text says now that Peter has a problem. The lesson then suggests that sometimes our problems are beyond our humanistic affluence and acumen and ability, but it requires the kind of supernatural intervention that only the God that you and I serve can give. The question is, what can I do to cause God to intervene on my behalf? Here is the answer. Since you've got problems like Peter, you got to do what Peter did, Johnson, in order to get what Peter got. The first thing Peter did, watch this, Peter came to the Lord like he had a need. Somebody say, I got a need. Please don't miss this. Here's where it gets good in the text, because the text says, and when they were come to Capernaum, they that received the tribute money came to Peter, asked him the question, do it not your master pay tribute? And Peter says yes. Now I told you what Peter is presented with as soon as he gets back home is a need. Can you imagine going on vacation, having a good time, laughing, taking pictures with Donald and Mickey, hanging out with Minnie, coming back, and as soon as you walk through your door, you got an eviction notice? Can you imagine how that literally blows the high of your vacation? Can you imagine what he's faced with? Peter has been on assignment with Jesus, comes home, and the first thing he hears about is your bill is past due. Said, no, you got a bill here and you got to do something to pay this bill. Peter, though, understands that he's got to go find Jesus because he has a need. So look at what they ask him in 24. Do your master pay bills? In 25, Peter says, yes. Now understand, Peter has proven down in the text that he knows Jesus is not required to pay taxes. But why is he saying he does pay taxes? Because Peter understands, if I've got a need, that means Jesus got a need, because my need is not my need. My need belongs to God. That's why he said, cast all your care upon him, because he cares for you. Now here's what you're going to shout for free. And those who ain't shouted all week long, all day long, I'm going to tell you to sit down, because this ain't your shout. But here's where you're going to shout for free right here. Watch this. Philippians 4:19 said, but my God shall supply all your what? Need according to his riches in glory. That ain't the shouting part yet. In the Greek, the word need comes from a Greek term, krya. And krya means necessity. It means duty, and it means business. Which means all my business belong to God. All of my duties, all of the stuff I got do belongs to God. All of my necessities belongs to God. And anytime I have a need, all I've got to do is find God, because my need and my business business belonged to him. Look at somebody and say, quit trying to handle it yourself. This is a job for Jesus. Mark Twain said this. Mark Twain said, necessity is the mother of taking chances. In other words, it makes you do stuff and it makes you ask for stuff you would not normally do and you would not normally ask for. So Peter understands, here's the first thing, that this was something he needed and it was past due. Now I told you, we don't know how long the taxes have been due because we don't know how long they've been in revival. They come home, they knock on the door, and automatically they say, look here, where my money? I know you've been healing folk been shouting, but where my money? Isn't it amazing? No matter how much good church we have, swept cold, still want their light bill, money paid. Can you imagine having folk set free, falling out, but still got to pay your cable bill? Can you imagine people getting delivered, but still got to pay your rent? Peter comes home and the bill is past due. Now, I look at stuff differently from other people because I like to be analytical. I remember Matthew 8:14 that says Jesus heals Peter's mother-in-law, which means Peter's a married man. So can you imagine how Miss Peter looking? You've been gone 3 weeks working with another dude. And our bills need to be paid at this house. Can you see Miss Peter looking like with the black woman wobble? Can you see Miss Peter now literally frustrated because she can't understand why you can't pay your bills and do God's work? So just when you thought I was getting ready to talk about your not paying bills and bad credit, I'm shifting because I'm trying to paint a picture here. Peter has the problem of having past due taxes. Now he got a wife who's upset with him at the same time. Peter's got problems. Anybody got problems like Peter? You trying to make everybody happy but can't make nobody happy. Peter has a problem now. So here is what Peter does now. Peter immediately comes where Jesus is. But aren't you glad Peter was not like the man at the pool of Bethesda in John 5:7 where the man said, I have no man to put me in the water when the water is troubled. See, sometimes God don't want you to tell him what you don't have. He just needs you to tell him what you need him to do. When was the last time you just said, God, here is what I need you to take care of, instead of, God, I don't know what I'm going to do. Hey, they want the money right now. I need somebody who understands you got to stand in faith and you got to open your mouth, speak to the mountain and declare and decree like David. I am old and I've been young. Never have I seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging for bread. Peter did not get pitiful. Peter got powerful. Most people never succeed because they make excuses of what they can't do instead of allowing God to show them what he wants to do for them. And so then, here's Peter. Peter says, okay, I got a need, and it's past due. He said, but since it's a need, I'm going to make me a declaration. He says, yes. Because see, the people ask him, can your master pay this? Peter says, yes. In other words, he says, I know you're looking at this car, and your credit's so bad, if we check it, you're going to jail. Can your faith pay for this? Peter says, yes. You don't even have the credit to go in an open house, but you opened the house anyway and walked in. And the devil tries to make you think that you shouldn't be there, but your faith says, yes. Peter is in this place. He makes a declaration that this is what I need God to do for me. It was David Cho who pastors Yodai Full Gospel Church in Seoul, Korea. It's the largest church in the world. It has over 1 million members with 700,000 active members. It's the size of several football fields, has the largest prayer ministry in the world. When he was believing God by faith, Brother Quentin, he stood out in faith and told God, he said, God, I need transportation. And God immediately sent him transportation. But guess what he sent him? A bicycle. And God sent him the bicycle, and he got frustrated with God. Please don't miss this. But God said to him, he said, you just asked for transportation. You weren't now specific in your declaration of what you needed by way of manifestation, which means sometimes you not only need to declare it, you've got to be specific when in your declaration. Please don't miss this. Not only does Peter say, I have a need, but Peter says this to me. He says, Mason, you got to have the right kind of nerve. Please don't miss this, guys. In verse 25, after he says yes, he's coming into the house. Jesus stops him in his tracks and says, Simon, what are you thinking about? He says, look here, man, I'm a king's kid. I don't pay taxes. He says, strangers pay taxes. But Peter speaks to Mason and he says, Mason, the only reason I did it is because I had the right kind of nerve. Just nudge somebody and tell them, say, you got to have the right kind of nerve when you come to God. You got to have the nerve to ask God for stuff you don't even deserve. You got to have the nerve to ask God for stuff so big until your faith can't even fathom it. You've got to have the right kind of nerve. J.K. Rowling says anything is possible with the right kind of nerve. Please don't miss this. He had the nerve to ask and believe, but he never got the chance to ask. But at least he was about to, because before he could ask Jesus, Jesus comes and prevents him. I'm taking my time on purpose, y'all. You're going to get excited in a minute. Jesus comes and prevents him because Peter braggingly says, my master pays all his bills. Walks in the back to find Jesus and to tell Jesus, I need a piece of money to pay my taxes. Now that doesn't seem significant being on top of the surface until you understand this. Peter had his own business. In Luke chapter 5, it says he was co-owner in a fisherman's business, which meant he was a money man. He was not a impoverished man. He was a successful businessman. Jesus walks up to Peter and tells Peter, quit your job and start walking with me. Watch this now. He didn't say, here comes the benefit plan. He didn't say, I tell you what, before you quit, here is what I have to offer. I'm going to give you top salary. I'm going to pay you 3 times what you make in your, matter of fact, I'm going to buy your business out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it public. I'm going to put it on the stock market, and I'm going to make your business a public corporation. That's what I'm going to do. He did not say, and the next thing I'm going to do, Peter, is I'm going to give you a matching 401k. Get that right there. Peter, I'm giving you 6 weeks of paid vacation. Get that right there. Peter, I'm going to make you the chairman of the board, Peter. No, he didn't say none of that. He just said, stop and start walking. So, Cherie, here is what he says to Peter. Stop taking care of yourself. Stop taking care of your family and follow me. Didn't offer him anything in return. Just have faith and follow me. Here is what Peter gets that we don't get. Peter says now, okay, my master gonna pay my taxes. They looking at him crazy because they don't understand why. Jesus is omniscient, so he understands why. But he comes and he checks Peter and said, Peter, why would you even say something like that? But here is what Peter told Mason. Peter said, Mason, what you didn't get and what the tax collector didn't get is Jesus called me off of my job. And since he called me off of my job, it became his job to take care of me. And all I'm trying to tell you is this. Whenever God tells you to do something and tells you to walk away from something and tells you you got to obey him in something, it becomes his obligation to take care of your situation. He says to him, he says, see, I had enough nerve. I said, what you mean, Peter? He said, I had imagination, I had expectation, and I had anticipation. I said, what do you mean? He said, imagination shows me it can happen. He says, expectation makes me believe it will happen. He says, but anticipation makes me act like it's already happened. And he said, what I did was I saw my bills paid. Y'all gonna get this after a while. Nudge your neighbor, said, I know you fell asleep. You gotta wake up now. He said, I saw my bills paid. And I started moving like they were already paid. And because I did, Jesus fixed my situation. Third thing in the text, and I'm gone. Just like Peter, not only must we understand that we have a need, and then secondly, We got to have the right kind of nerve. But just like Peter, you got to come to God in a sense of urgency, acting like what you need him to do, you need him to do it now. Touch your neighbor, say, I need it done now. Look at somebody, say, I don't need it done tomorrow. I need something done. I don't need a move of God next week. I need something done. I don't need God to work it out next year. I need something done. Look what the text said. The text says, Jesus said, notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea and cast in a hook and take up the fish of the first one that cometh up. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money, and take and give unto them for me and thee. Peter just simply said, Jesus, I need something done now. And when he heard the sense of urgency in his voice, like he needed something done now, although he was not supposed to succumb to the solicitation of the temple tax, because he was not a stranger but a king's child, he said, nevertheless, lest we should offend them, let's go ahead and pay my tax and your tax. But what he was really saying is, Peter, you placed such a demand on me to do something now. I'm going to go ahead and do what I wasn't going to do because of the kind of faith you put on me to do it. And sometimes that's what God wants. He just simply wants you to believe that he can do it. And I'm reminded of the Hebrew boys who were about to go in the fiery furnace. You understand the text that says Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were about to be thrown into the fiery furnace. And they said that they turned it up 7 times hotter than it already was. And then they told them to bow down when you hear the sound and worship the strange God. But then they replied and said to them, it said, O king, we are not careful to answer you in this matter. He said, yeah, as I paraphrase, the God that we serve may not deliver us from the fiery furnace, but the one thing we know about this God is he's still able. Touch your neighbor and shake their hand and say, neighbor, even though God may not come when I want him to come, I understand that he's still able to do exceeding abundantly above all that I can ask or think. I need some voice. Y'all praying with me? Shake your neighbor by the hand like you're gonna shake it off and say, neighbor, say, neighbor, my God, he's able to do what I need him to do. But I need God to step in right now and do for me that I don't have the power to do for myself. One writer said it like this. He said, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift, and that's why they call it the present. It's right now, and that's when I need God to do something for me right now. It's a period of time in the present moment with emphasis upon the importance and the urgency of what I need God to do. Shake your neighbor like you're gonna shake the hand off and say, neighbor, say, neighbor, neighbor. Whenever you find yourself in the place where you need God to do something now, you've got to do something to get his attention. And just like a baby that needs her mama, she shouts with a loud shout and an urgent sound that tells the Lord, or tells her mama, I need you now. And that's all you've got to do is open your mouth and shout with the kind of sound that tells the Lord, I need you, Lord, and I need you right now. I heard Paul say, for I reckon that the sufferings of the present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory which shall be revealed in us. And God told me to tell you, when you need something done now, you can't focus on what's happening now. You need faith that believes that what I see has nothing to do with what I'm seeing, because what I'm seeing is the natural, but what I saw is the supernatural. Is there anybody here that need God to step in now? And you are saying, what I saw God doing for me way back then is what I'm asking him to do right now. Shake your neighbor by the hand like you're gonna shake it off, but look at him this time and say, neighbor, y'all ain't shaking and y'all ain't talking. Find somebody, find somebody, find somebody and shake their hand and say, neighbor, I need God to come right now. When I call him, I know he'll come if I call him the right way. When I call him, I know he'll move if I call him the right way. When I call him, I know he'll come if I call him with the right tone and the right sound. On the count of 3, I just need you to call him by his name. His name is Jesus. Call him. 1, 2, 3. Call him Jesus. Call him like you need him. Call him like he will do anything but fail. I gotta get out of here, but Peter told him, I need you now because I got a debt that needs to be paid. I need you now because it's something that I can do on my own behalf. Now I told you earlier, now unto him that is able to do exceeding and abundantly above all you can ask or think, according to the power at work within us. Say, the power is already in me. The Greeks called it the ischus power. It separates from the dunamis and from the exousia. Exousia means authority and dunamis means dynamite, but ischus means ability. The dynamite will explode whether I move or not, but the ischus will not start doing until I start moving. Shake your neighbor by the hand and say, excuse me while I move, and let the ischus start doing what it's supposed to do. Y'all ain't moving. You got to move for the ischus to start moving. But look at Jesus. He said, Peter, I'ma pay your bills, but here what you gotta do. Get you a rod in the reel, in layman's terms. But he told Peter, get your net, go down to the sea, cast your hook, and the first fish that comes out of the water, take it up, open its mouth, and get some money and pay my bill and your bill too. Hold on, Peter. What was he saying? He said the dude is inside of you, but you've got to do what you're supposed to do before I do what I'm gonna do. Now, for the sake of review, let's remember what Peter's old job was. He was a fisherman. He told Peter, some problems you got to go to work in order for them to work out. Shake your neighbor by the hand and said, in this season you can't be lazy, but you gotta be crazy enough to do what he tells you to do. He told Peter, go back to doing what you used to do, what you know how to do, and watch watch me do what I'm supposed to do. Ask your neighbor, say, what is God waiting on you to do before he does what he's gonna do? He told Peter, go cast a hook, pull up the fish. He pulled up the first fish and got the money. I asked God a question. I said, now let's talk about fish. Fish cannot breathe like humans who have lungs. They have gills. How in the world could he have money lodged in his mouth and still live? I asked him the question. He said, I can't give you the answer, but I will allow you to use your sanctified imagination. He said, maybe I cultivated the fish for a purpose. Opened his gills, opened his mouth so he could hold the money without swallowing it. In other words, I've got the power to change a situation and cultivate it and make it what it needs to be to do what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to do through the situation. He said, but maybe I didn't cultivate the fish. He said, maybe the fish was a plain fish, but I created the money in his mouth. In other words, if I don't cultivate, I still have the power to just create a situation and take something out of nothing and make it everything it needs to be. I said, God, why would you toy with me and not give me the answer? He said, it's all about perspective. He said, it depends on how you look at it. And Calhoun, I was going to leave y'all alone, but God reminded me of a story about a person who had a certain perspective. He said, one man's problem is another man's possibility. He said, well, one sees opposition, the other sees an opportunity. Shake your neighbor by the hand. Say, it depends on how you look at it. The story goes, there were two old friends that ran into each other, and Quentin, man, they started talking and began to share how life had treated them. One talked about all the things that she'd been through. She said, well, old friend, I was married. She said, that's good. And she said, no, he was twice my age. She said, oh, I'm so sorry. She said, no, he was a millionaire. She said, oh, that's good. And she said, no, he was very stingy. She said, oh no. She said, yes, but he bought me a house. She said, that's good. She said, oh no, the house burned down. She said, what? She said, yeah, but that was okay. He was in the house when the house burned down. And just because he was too stingy, he was too hard-hearted, he was too careless, when the house burned down, he burned with it. And now everything that I didn't have, I now have it. It all depends on how you look at it. Get out of your seat, shake your neighbor by the hand and say, neighbor, say neighbor, say neighbor. It all depends on how you look at it. Good evening, y'all. I gotta go to my seat, but I've got problems just like Peter. But my problems are God's possibilities. It all depends on how you look at it. Y'all ought to indulge me a moment and go shake another hand. Said it all depends on how you look at it. I'm not worried about my problems because there are possibilities to my God. It all depends. Y'all ain't moving. It all depends. It all depends. Yeah! Yeah! Oh! It all depends on how you look at it. Watch this. What I thought was sent to destroy me, I found out was sent to develop me. What I thought was sent to kill me, I found out was sent to cultivate me. But it depends on how you look at it. Peter saw a problem, but God saw a possibility. How would you ever know what he can do if you never needed him to do something? Your name is Peter today. And the reason I know is because you need God to do something you can't do for yourself. The temple tax man may not be at the door. The eviction notice may not be on the door. But you may have trouble in your mind that you can't seem to dismiss. You may have trouble in your soul that keeps you from being at peace. You may have something in your body that the doctors cannot figure out. And so here is the question. How would you know he's a comforter if you've never lost comfort? How would you know he's a savior if you never needed saving? How would you know he's a deliverer if you never needed delivering? How would you know he's a healer if you never needed healing? Sometimes he purposely puts us in these predicaments just to pull us out of them. And so if that's you today, and you find yourself in one of these seemingly insurmountable, clap your hands, somebody's coming, situations,